They don't mess around here at Life of the Law. James Brosnahan is a senior trial counsel at Morrison and Foerster. I didn't get a second interview at Morrison and Foerster. James Brosnahan. He has tried to conclusion over 150 cases ranging from antitrust to wire fraud. Forget all this. This is one of the top lawyers in America. And I am so delighted, actually awed, to introduce Mr. James Brosnahan.
Can you start Monday? Are you available? Good evening, everybody. Love and the law, law and love. That evening, on September 25th, 1958, the person I'm about to introduce you to prepared oysters Rockefeller and apple crumb pie, and it was delicious. And she served that to 6 law students in a kitchen in Cambridge. I was one of those people. This morning, she cooked me oatmeal. But she still cooks really fancy things. The theme of this evening's proceedings is undeniable. Who cannot be moved by the stories of people who not only in themselves have been in situations where the full American set of rights is denied to them, but who represent now and in the past an entire group of people who have been somehow denied that which is fundamental, that which all of us should be able to easily access. The story I'm about to tell you has to do with getting married and insisting on the right to marry the person that you love. It's a very simple story, and yet society very often draws itself up with its assumptions and its habits and its ways of thinking that deny people things. And what I want to say to you tonight is the promise of America always, and even tonight, is that the doors which are closed will be opened. And they're not all opened, even this evening. As an example of how I feel about it, it's been mentioned that Hawaii was the first state to consider authorizing, legalizing gay marriage. And it was many years ago. I'm not sure exactly. I'm sure there are people here who know exactly when it was. But I was, of all things, playing golf in Hawaii, which is what lawyers do sometimes. And I was returning the cart, and the guy who was taking care of the cart, and he took my golf shoes and so forth, he said, "Did you ever hear of anything as ridiculous as the idea that 2 gay people could get married?" I had not heard the idea before, and I turned to him and I said, out of the essence of my character, I said, "There's not enough love in the world. I'm sure of that. And if 2 people want to get married, nobody should ever get in their way." The story I'm going to tell you is about the young woman and the young man in the kitchen in 1958. The young woman was Jewish and went to Wellesley College on a quota, which I'm sure was thought of as a liberal, progressive kind of step at the time. They had forbidden Jews to go to Wellesley, but they were changing it, but they didn't want too many. 15% was thought to be appropriate. Otherwise, they'd overrun the place because, they're really very smart, Who doesn't know that, right? But there went Carol Simon from New York City, who was wonderfully smart, and went through Wellesley and rolled the hoops or whatever they were doing over there. If I sound vague about it, while she was hobnobbing with society people and all these wealthy, children of famous families with names that were on refrigerators and stoves, like Tappan and, whatever. I was over at Boston College with the Roughnecks. There we had 2/3 Irish, 1/3 Italian, one black guy, and one confused Jewish guy, who I think had come to the wrong place. And Jesuits everywhere. And behind me, in my family, all the way back, I had, first of all, I should tell you, 20 aunts and uncles, all of them Irish, with only 2 exceptions. 2 exceptions. And behind them, my grandparents, and behind them, my great-grandparents. And the great-grandparents, you might have thought at the particular time and the particular moment, were people that needed lawyers, needed support, needed help, because they came out of the hunger in Ireland, which is another story. Brosnahan means twigs in Ireland. I don't think we were a big deal in that country. I think we were outside the castle. In case I would want to brag, I have looked at 500 books on Irish history in the indexes. B.R.O. Brown. There's not a Brosnahan in any book on Irish history. I thought that maybe Charles Stewart Parnell at some point would say, "Here, Brosnahan, hold my coat while I do great things." Nothing. Zero. Zilch. There is a modesty about it that's unbelievable. And yet, one of my great-grandmothers, I've been doing some family history, gave birth to 12 children. 12 children, 4 of whom died before they were 2 years old. And they went to church one Sunday. There was an orphan up front, and the priest said, "John, you've already got 8. Why don't you take her home?" And he said, "Okay, I will." And she went to college. See, that's the Irish experience. And there were Irish storytellers. And there was 100 years of the denial of education. There's all that old stuff that I really wonder whether you can relate to at all. But I do relate to it. I do relate to it. And when Carol had prepared the oysters Rockefeller, she looked at me and she said, "There's a Catholic mixer on Friday. Are you going?" With my ego, I thought, she likes me. She denies that. I asked her recently. I said, "You liked me right then." She said, "I didn't like you right then." That's the way people who've been married for 55 years talk. They want, I need to straighten that out. My answer, I thought, was snappy. I said, "I'm not going to the mixer. I can get my own dates," which was not true at that time. Okay? I have to be honest. We had promised ourselves in that house, the 6 of us, the law students, the men, that we wouldn't date the cook because it wouldn't work out. It was an honorable thing to swear to, which we did. 3 weeks later, Carol and I got engaged. And all hell broke loose. I don't think I'm adequate with the words to convince you that in 1958 in Boston, Irish people did not marry Jewish people. It was not done. Even now we can say, because there's such progress in America, the promise of progress in America is so strong that we can't even understand why that would be, but it was. My best friend from high school and college was asked by me to be my best man. He couldn't come to the wedding. At the wedding, Carol could get very few relatives to come, and many to write letters about why this was a terrible idea. It's ridiculous. It was silly. We didn't really care. And I will say that Carol's aunt came, and I was glad we had somebody there. She sat in the corner and cried throughout the entire ceremony. I think she was sitting, whatever that is in the Jewish community, when you sit and you moan, hey, she's gone, she's gone. We could care less. The point, all night here with these stories, two people love each other, and that's it. You mean the government might get in the way? You mean elected people might get in the way? You mean rabbis might get in the way, or priests, or ministers might get in the way and might say, you cannot do this? An antique time, an old time, but we are animated by it in our family. People would ask us, we have 3 kids, and they're terrific. But people would say, when they would realize that we were something called a mixed marriage, they would say, usually in a soft voice, how do you bring up the children? As though it's impossible, isn't it? And after a while I would say, we give them Wheaties and we send them to Berkeley High School. We are happy to join in anybody else's fight for liberty in this country. We do what we can. Carol and I have marched back in the day in front of the Palace Hotel. I marched there, and then we went out on Van Ness and we marched. We formed, it was such a good thing for us, a view of current public opinion, if it could be so wrong about the two of us. I think I'm probably speaking for Carol. Then they could be wrong about so many other things. They could be wrong if they think they should take all of our emails and all of our telephone calls. That could be totally and completely wrong. Just happens to be my opinion. So, 55 years of marriage, luck beyond maybe even what we deserve, and an opportunity to come and be what the Irish call a sanchee. A sanchee is a person who tells stories. It's the oral tradition. Back in the day, there was the flood, and there was this, and there was that. The sanchees would be called in, and you never knew when they'd give a talk, but usually it had to do with liquor. And so the sanchee would drink, and the word would go out, the sanchee's gonna talk, and here it is. And then the sanchee would talk about the old days. Well, I can't replicate that, but I can appreciate the spirit that brought together tonight so that people could tell you stories. And here's what I believe, and here's what I think you believe. America was put here for the purpose of allowing, perhaps slowly and at times much too slowly, the blooming of equality as all of us get rid of ideas that in any way intimidate or hold back any particular person. We rid our minds of categories of people, and we rejoice when we meet individuals and appreciate everything about them, because they are all one. They all struggle. They all work. They all have families. They all have aspirations. This is the promise of America, not put together by me for the purpose of this program, but it is obvious to me that that is true. So I really appreciate, more than I can say, the opportunity to be with you tonight, to listen to the other speakers, to appreciate my friends who were able to get married, and to wish you all the best. Thanks.